Greetings. I'm happy to be with you again today to give you some very good news about awakening. Awakening is much easier today than ever before on the planet. So much help and support are being given to you from other dimensions and in other ways that it's much easier for people to awaken and detach from the egoic mind, which is what keeps people trapped in the illusion. It's only your thoughts that create the illusion that you're a separate person who has problems, who wishes life were different than it is. The false self, which is created by thoughts about yourself, is an unhappy self. There isn't a person alive who has a happy, content, false self. Any discontentment and unhappiness come from believing that you are the false self, that you are what your thoughts tell you about yourself and about life. The false self is unhappy and discontent because that's the nature of the ego, which is behind the construction of the false self. The false self is constructed from thoughts, and what produces those thoughts is conditioning. Much of that conditioning is based on the ego's perceptions of life. It perceives that life is not good and that you're not good enough. In the egoic state of consciousness, there's a perception of lack, of a problem, and a desiring and longing for what isn't here and what will never be here, and then suffering over that. That's the essential nature of the false self. That which is content is not the false self. When you experience contentment, you're experiencing your true self, your divine self. The being that you are, which is listening to these words, is supremely content, supremely happy, and supremely at peace and in love with life. Whenever you feel that way, you're experiencing your true being and the truth about life, which is that life is a miracle, a gift. The being that you are rejoices in this miracle of life. You know what that feels like. There isn't a human being alive who doesn't know what it feels like to rejoice in life, to be happy. For some, this is felt only briefly, and yet it's there, since the divine self is what's living everyone's life. The divine self can never be completely covered over. The divine self is not such a mystery, really. It's not so hidden. It's here. It's what's content. It's what feels peace, joy, gratitude, acceptance, kindness, and compassion. Those experiences are real and true. They're the ongoing experience of your true self. The false self doesn't experience these feelings or any other feelings. The false self is just thoughts, and thoughts don't experience. There is no false self. There is no entity that is the false self that could experience anything. But when you believe you are the false self, and you believe the discontentment and unhappiness of the false self, then you experience those feelings. What experiences these feelings is your being. Your being is not having those feelings. It did not create those feelings, and yet it's experiencing them. It is so accepting that it allows the experience of negativity to be its experience, all the while knowing that those negative feelings are not the truth. That's interesting, isn't it? That belief in thoughts creates a certain experience, and yet there is no false self that's experiencing anything. There is only experience. There's actually no being here either, but language requires that we speak about the divine aspect of your nature as a being or as if it were an entity. The divine self is not a being, but being is a good word for the divine self, because the divine self is actually an experiencing. It is what is experiencing life. It is what is being in life. It is what is existing in life. It is what has life. But it is not in it. And that's difficult for the mind to understand because your language is structured as subjects and verbs. There is no subject in the usual sense. It's more like who you are as a verb. It is the experience of life. It is the existing. It is the isness, the beingness. But it's not a being, and it's not a thing or an entity. Your language fools you into thinking that the false self is real and that there's an entity behind your thoughts, when there is no such entity. Your thoughts are simply programming. Just as there is no entity behind a computer, there is no entity behind your thoughts, only programming. So even though your thoughts speak to you, like Siri or Alexa might, there's no Siri, there's no Alexa. Your thoughts are just programming. You think you need your thoughts. That's the lie that keeps you involved with them. You believe you need your thoughts, and so you continue to listen to them as if they were wise, as if they were who you are. But they are neither wise nor representative of who you are. This is very good news, because you don't have to suffer any longer once you see this, since there is no suffering without believing your mistaken thoughts. You only suffer when you believe a lie, and the only lies you could possibly believe are the ones that come from your own mind or from other people's minds. The truth doesn't exist in your mind. The truth cannot be comprehended by your mind, and it doesn't need to be. The truth is here, now, in the experience that you're having. The truth is this simple experience that you're having, and there's nothing to say about it. There is no right or wrong. It is just this simple experience. Can you stay in this simple experience? Are you willing to stay in this simple experience? The mind doesn't want you to stay. It wants to pull you out of this simple experience. It tells you, that's nothing. Nothing's happening. Let's play in the imaginary reality. If only this imaginary reality were free of suffering, it wouldn't be such a bad deal. But the imaginary reality is created by thoughts like, I wish and I want, and there's suffering in those thoughts. There's suffering in wanting something that isn't here, in wishing for something other than what is. There's suffering in that, and wanting never gets you there. It never gets you to the peace and happiness that it promises. All the imaginations in the world don't add up to anything at all. In the end, you're left with just this. Just this. Even in calling it just this, it's minimized by your language, as if just this isn't enough, when it's everything and it's all that you have. From just this comes all of life. Every inspiration, every bit of courage, every bit of love, every bit of goodness, kindness, and wisdom about how to live your life come from just this. If you're attending to just this, you'll be happy, you'll be wise, courageous, and strong. This is who you are, just this simple existing, this simple experiencing. Within this simple experience is a knowing about how to move in the world, how to live your life. It is a deep knowing, which doesn't come to you through thoughts. You all know what I'm talking about. This deep knowing is your being living this life, unfolding your life, if you let it. Your being will let you follow your thoughts, and it will let your ego lead you through life if that's the experience you want. But you don't have to have that experience. You can be done with that now. Many of you are ready to be done with that. You're ready to have something else lead you through life. Many of you are already letting that mysterious something lead you through life much of the time. Awakening is about living from this place of deep knowing, of simple existence. And that's what we're about here, to help you learn to live from this place, instead of from your programmed ideas about what you should do and who you are. We know who you are. We see you, and we're reflecting that back to you. That is our job, to show you the truth, to point it out. But you must choose this over your thoughts about yourself. Let your thoughts about yourself go. You don't need them. They are the false self. Then listen deeply within yourself for the knowing that's meant to inform your life, and live accordingly. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your willingness to receive. You have our blessing. I am with you always.